All right, Yahoo Fantasy Baseball 2010, Tucson Toros Group Week 4. We're going to take a look at Waveland and Sheffield versus Greek Thunder. Final score in this one was 6-2 in favor of Waveland and Sheffield. A big matchup win for Waveland, taking on a team in Greek Thunder that was off to a pretty good start. So Waveland now sits 22-16-2, while Greek sits 25-12-3. So these teams are very close in the standings as well. Two early season leaders faced off, and Waveland came out with a pretty decisive win. Took 3 of 5 in offense and pitching, so look to have the better team in both the offense and the pitching. That's going to be very important, showing some diversity and the ability to pick up points in multiple categories. Could be a dangerous, threat in any area. It looks like, especially against a team like Greek that is definitely active and trying to stay atop in the top 6 or 8 teams. Both teams hit over 300. Impressive battle in the average category. Waveland got the edge by just .004. Waveland hit 304 for the week. Greek hit just 300. I say just 300. Both teams fantastic average, so definitely love to see that. Big time battle in the runs category ended in a split. It was tough to see somebody not pick up a point there, considering both teams had very high scores in runs. For Waveland and Sheffield, Cubby himself, Alfonso Soriano, hit 4 home runs, owned the Diamondbacks this past weekend, had 10 RBIs, hit for 400 average. Fantastic output from Soriano, a guy that was really down last season fantasy baseball-wise. Good to see him get off to a good start here to the season, or at least bounce back in the last week, that's for sure. 5 players for the team had 5+ RBIs, so definitely an RBI machine in Waveland and Sheffield. Now, Greek had 8 players hit homers. That's very impressive, considering how hard it is to get the home run category set on your lineup. Not a whole lot of players on the team hit multiple homers, but having the ability to hit homers from so many different sources, definitely something that's going to benefit Greek down the road, especially if injuries or anything came into play later in the season. Greek took wins and saves, but lost Ks, ERA, and WHIP. Looking at it, Waveland had a great week from the closers, but the lone win for Waveland this week was Barry Zito. The starting pitching staff struggled to pick up victories. Rough return for Ted Lilly, the Cubby himself. Ted Lilly struggled in his return. And Greek Thunder produced more saves, but then Waveland took the saves category, but had very shaky performances from them. High ERA, not so good WHIP for what you'd want to see out of closers. So while Waveland had a decent turnout as far as the saves category goes, he got beat. But you really don't want to see, yeah, you win saves, but they destroy your ERA WHIP. That's like hitting into a double play, essentially. You're sure, yeah, maybe you move that runner to third, but you just hit into a double play and got 2 outs. That's kind of what happens when you pick up the saves, but you blow up your ERA and WHIP, and that seems to be what happened for Greek. Greek's going to continue to see this going forward with a reliever-heavy lineup. Only 4 starters on that pitching staff. With a ton of relievers, you're either going to see feast or famine. In most cases, you're either going to see great returns in the save category, and then they'll help ERA and WHIP, because obviously to get saves, you can't let people score. And then if you don't have a whole lot of starters, that can help you in ERA and WHIP, because if they have good weeks, they don't blow up your stats, whereas staffs that have maybe 6 or 7 starters could wind up screwing up the ERA and WHIP categories because 1 or 2 of them has a bad week. Now, Greek could have the flip side of that happen, where the relievers wind up having a bad week and then blow up your ERA. And then it doesn't matter what your starters did, because if your relievers do poorly, there's no benefit to having them on the roster in the first place. So Greek's going to see this bounce back and forth throughout the year. It should be interesting to see what happens and whether or not Greek needs to make some moves down the road to address this situation. Did manage 5 wins this week from just 4 starters. One of those wins actually came from Ryan Madsen, who's now on the DL and lost his closer's job for the Phillies. So a closer picking up a win, always a good thing. But Ryan Madsen, a whole nother story. Broken big toe from kicking a steel chair. Definitely not a good situation. Greek may even wind up taking a look at releasing Madsen. Madsen's value in fantasy baseball right now, very low. Greek, 3rd in the standings despite 3rd loss. So First loss of the season for Greek. Still third in the standings. Fantastic start to the year for Greek. Waveland's now fifth in the top six. Very important to stay in the top six. Top six to make the playoffs. So definitely a great start for Waveland as well. Next week, Waveland's going to be taking on big-time rival Hunt 1981. Should be a fantastic matchup. While Greek is going to take on somewhat rival Jimmy Dugan in the standings. Those two teams, third and seventh overall. So it should be a great matchup for both teams. Looking forward to either build some momentum or really put their teams to the test early in the season, see what they've got.